the acquired company's culture into the acquiring company. Where you're wowing and awing, that's awesome. Chris,
For real
Chris,
though.
after Steve Jobs passes away at Apple, hired Tim Cook trying to figure things out. Chris comes up with the words that guide them from being a small $600 billion company to a $3 trillion company. And I just want to ask him, like, as we, I want to ask you that question. It's like, where do you guys see as the challenges? Like, that sounds really cool. Oh yeah, 600 billion, 3 trillion, cool. But what was difficult? What is difficult? What is the reality of trying to co-create that you guys need to put out a book? What did you learn from those instances? Because Pixar to me was the company that first caught my imagination about co-creating. In the 90s when they came out with Toy Story, I was like, oh my gosh, there's a different way to make movies now. You know, and how they did it. Not just what they did, but how they did it. But what do we need to know about the challenges ahead? And then I'll tee you up for your talk, and then if those of us who want to get back up to the dessert and the fire can get back out there.
Yeah, first of all, I just want to acknowledge, it's just amazing to be in your presence, everybody. I think we have a powerful group here. And I think we're at a time, you know, after the pandemic, there's never been a greater need for gathering and building the kind of energy that we can feel in this room. You know, over centuries, people have tried to create a perpetual motion machine, right? Da Vinci tried it, Tesla tried, he iterated in his head, and nobody really solved it. But I think for us, we can solve this question, but it's people power. And perpetual motion really happens with culture. When you build cultures people love, that is that magnetic force that carries us forward. And we live in a time where it's, you know, so much division, there's so many things happening, you know, that are trying to divide us, right? These forces Michael was talking about. And as you're sharing your experiences, I mean, you know, between what each of you have been talking about in your own experiences, I'm sitting here getting teary-eyed because this is a manifestation of, well, years of work, decades of work in my life, or just to see and experience this moment, right? Where we're saying to ourselves, you know, and largely in Western culture, we've been told, you know, hey, you know, hack and hustle and optimize yourself. And these aren't wrong, right? Be brave, because that breaks you away from fear. I guess to the point, right? To the question is, you know, why don't other companies, why don't other people, why don't you know, business leaders sometimes, or teams, do this kind of work, right? That the Pixars or the Apples or the Nikes do, or any great team, right? In the NBA, you've got plenty of examples of this. I mean, look at Steph Curry and the Warriors in their peak seasons.
He's a Warrior fan.
I'm a Warrior fan.
What about the Lakers?
I have to qualify that in their peak seasons, just to qualify. So TBD for this year. But when you see them in motion, this isn't just, you know, we talk about flow, right? Flow is when you are doing the work that makes your heart sing, right? Whether that's basketball, whether it's design, whatever that is for you. And that's an amazing feeling because you step outside of time and it becomes timeless. And there's even a higher level than that, which is when you experience that with other people, shared flow, right? And we see it in teams, right? When a team is moving down the court and they're in unison. And, you know, the Navy SEALs have looked at this and they see it happening in certain teams. They can't explain it and they don't even know how to hire for it, but they know it's real. And, you know, in our lives and in the workplace and in these organizations and in any culture, with any leader, any team that's looking at it, well, we can ask ourselves this question, but it's really a designed for question. Is it designed for? Have you set out to do this? But what if we did, right? What if we said to ourselves, What if every meeting we can at least aspire to and design for having shared flow? Having that state of feeling where we are one, you know, and we're gathering together to build something special. And those are the things that those teams do. And you know, you could say, well, why isn't every company a $3 trillion company? Why don't they create products like that? Well, it's really hard. That's the short answer. But it's also very hard to maintain this state of shared flow on the one hand, and yet on the other hand, it's very easy. Because if you ask yourself, like Tracy was talking about before with Jose, well, how hard is it to really connect and to bring your dream forward in an ego-free way like Michael was talking about? And you put those building blocks on the table, right? And you say, this is what I'm thinking. And it's a little rough, right? You stand the chance of being very vulnerable because you're saying, I don't really know, right? The answers to this. And that was always the amazing thing for me, you know, being in those meetings with those people in Apple, for example, where they're saying, you know, these are PhDs, these are people that have written white papers about these things, and they're the top experts in the world, and yet they're coming to the table saying, I have no clue how we're going to do this, and they're completely humble to the universe. And I was always amazed by that, thinking, how in the world? I mean, this is the top person, these are the top people, but they knew that by going through that and by reaching into the ether together, you could find something that would be true magic. And that's, you could call it faith, but it's definitely being brave together.
Chris,
Right. So for me, I have a background in healthcare. I didn't work at Apple, but I met Chris around the time when he started at Apple. And he was chartered with a challenge to help Apple's culture define its future. It was struggling in the sense of culture at the time. This is post Steve Jobs' death, and 70% of the workforce couldn't learn Apple fast enough. Steve Jobs was the culture before. And so when we connected, and we'll get more into that, we would have these what if discussions, and he would present these challenges, and we just started to dream, Scott, and share. We started to share a vision for what could be possible. So let's back up a bit. There are pain points for all of us. We've all had situations where we worked with a toxic boss, someone that abuses their authority because they can't let that ego that's so heavily guarded down. We've been in toxic cultures where there's cliques and there's infighting and there's politics and there's bureaucracy, and there's gossip. These places are different, Pixar, Apple, because that ego isn't as strong as most places. And so these PhDs would have patents stacked still in the boxes or the envelopes up to almost the ceiling in some of these offices, because it wasn't about getting the patent, I'm special, I'm smart. It was about progressing ideas, right? So at a foundation or a basic level, we can all see why co-creation doesn't work because we've been a part of those settings, right? It's not that it's easy, but it was easier when people are open, when they're humble, when they're hungry, to work together with intention, right? So I'm gonna turn the time over to Chris. He's gonna share something with you that manifested at the pinnacle of this culture shaping work that we did. And it captures the spirit of where Apple went in their journey to get to this maintaining stability for the future, right? And innovating.